In the news tonight, Jordan condemns the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque compound by Jewish extremists led by the Israeli Agriculture Minister and the ensuing clashes that left dozens of guards and worshippers injured. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad says the Syrian army is quite capable, but the type of war confronting the country means the army cannot fight everywhere for risk of losing vital ground. And Kurdish militants killed 2 Turkish soldiers in an apparent retaliation of Ankara's crackdown of the PKK, and NATO calls an emergency meeting on Tuesday to discuss the security situation in Turkey. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty the King instructed the government and all its institutions to accord due attention to the kingdom's economic conditions. During a visit to the Prime Ministry and a meeting with Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, His Majesty urged the cabinet and competent officials to intensify efforts towards boosting the investment and business environment as a key engine of economic growth. His Majesty said additional reform are needed, coupled with a review of economic legislation to further improve the investment and business environment and promote economic development in order to create livelihood opportunities. King Abdullah also instructed the government to accelerate the process of addressing challenges facing the private sector by means of furthering communication channels with private sector institutions. Jordan condemned the storming of occupied Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque compound by a number of Jewish extremists led by Israel Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel and the ensuing clashes in which dozens of guards and worshippers were injured. Minister of State for Media Affairs and official government spokesman Mohammed al-Momani described the repeated Israeli violation of the holy site as meant to provoke the sentiment of Arabs and Muslims. Momani said Israelis should stand up to its responsibility as the occupied power and prevent the recurrence of such vicious assaults against the holy site as well as its guards and worshippers. In occupied East Jerusalem, meanwhile, Palestinians and Israeli police using stun grenades clashed at Al-Aqsa Mosque Plaza on the anniversary of what Jews claim the destruction of the Jewish temple. No serious injuries were reported at the site, which lies in the Israeli-occupied walled old city. A police spokeswoman said Palestinians have prepared makeshift barricades and used rocks, metal bars and flares to attack police who came to dismantle them. Violence at the site has flared in the past year, with Palestinians angered by visits to the compound by non-Muslim, including ultra-nationalist Jews. Police used stun grenades to push protesters back into the mosque and stepped inside its entrance way to close the main doors, which the spokeswoman said was jammed open by rock throwers. Jewish ultra-nationalists have been pushing the Israeli government to allow Jewish prayers on the compound outside Al-Aqsa, which stands above the Western Wall. Over to the Syria crisis, and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has said the type of war confronting the country means the army cannot fight everywhere for risk of losing vital ground. In a televised speech today focused on the war in his country, Assad said the army has been forced to give up areas in order to hold on to more important ones in its fight with insurgents, acknowledging the scale of the war means the military faces a manpower shortage. Assad said increased support from states backing the rebels, including Turkey, was the reason for recent setbacks that have created a state of despair among Syrians. The Syrian government's territorial control stands at no more than 25% of the country, with the rest divided among an array of armed groups, including Daesh and other rebel groups, and a well-organized Kurdish militia, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. But the state held is home to the majority of the population. However, Assad said the army is capable without effort, but there's a shortfall in manpower.
حالة مصيرية لا حلول وسط فيها.
We are in a fateful period where there is no place for half measures and where hesitation equals defeatism, cowardice and treason. So there is no waiver of rights, no waste of even 1 inch of land. We will not be slaves but independent masters.
And to Iraq, where security forces today made substantial advance against Daesh. Iraqi security forces launched a surprise offensive against Daesh terrorists in the compound of the University of Anbar in southern Ramadi. The university compound represents a significant stronghold and a key command base used by top Daesh commanders to orchestrate battles in other parts of Ramadi. According to a statement by the Iraqi Joint Operation Command, broadcast on state television, Special Forces, Army and Federal Police entered the university compound, supported by intense bombing from US-led coalition warplanes. A spokesman for the counterterrorism forces said the troops managed to recapture most of the university buildings. The capture of the university complex, which has been used as an insurgent command base, could advance government effort to retake Ramadi, the capital of Anbar, after its fall to Daesh in May.
Troops are now engaging in battles to clean it up from the remains of terrorist Daesh and dismantling bombs and cleaning roads. And they are continuing their advance towards the Tamim neighborhood, despite the fact that the terrorist Daesh is barricaded in 3 interconnecting hotels with explosives and barbed wires. The counter-terrorism unit has set up an operation room in the university and is using its best fighters.
Meanwhile, and according to U.S. military statement, the U.S.-led coalition today launched 20 airstrikes against Daesh in Iraq, with targets mostly concentrated in Ramadi. 5 strikes near Ramadi hit tactical units, tanks, armored personnel carrier, as well as other targets, while 4 strikes hit Daesh staging areas near Tuz. The coalition launched 13 airstrikes in Syria, with 5 near Kobani, hitting targets and fighting positions. Back here at home, official spokesperson of the Jordan Armed Forces, the Arab Army, said border guards front surveillance units arrested 3 individuals after they tried to infiltrate into Syria through the Jordanian borders. One of the infiltrators was injured during the arrests. According to the spokesperson, the infiltrators had their possessions various weapons and communication devices. Again, the spokesman said the Jordan Armed Forces would not tolerate any attempt aimed at compromising the kingdom's security and would not hesitate to use force in line with the rule of the engagement. Yemeni forces allied with the Saudi-led coalition fought Houthi militia for control of Al-Anad air base north of Aden hours before a humanitarian truce was meant to start. The coalition announced yesterday a ceasefire that was to take effect this evening for 5 days to allow for the delivery of humanitarian aid. But the truce ran into doubt when Houthi leaders Abd al-Malik al-Houthi was reported to have rejected ceasefire, arguing it would benefit only Daesh and Al-Qaeda. Al-Houthi was quoted as saying in a message posted on the group's Twitter account that the battle goes on and the war is not over. And the Al-Anad base, 50 kilometers from the southern port city and where the fighting is raging, has been held by the Houthis for much of the 4-month-old civil war and is seen as a strategic location commanding the approaches to Aden. On a tour of Gulf Arab states, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif called for a united front among all Middle Eastern nations to fight extremism and militancy. He urged Gulf states to join forces with Tehran to fight against extremism, saying the threat to one country is a threat to all. Speaking in Kuwait at a news conference hosted by the Iranian embassy, Zarif said no country can solve regional problems without the help of others. Zarif earlier met Kuwaiti leader Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Sabah. Zarif was later due to go on to Qatar and then Iraq. Over to Turkey, where Kurdish radical fighters killed 2 Turkish soldiers in a roadside bombing in Diyarbakir in the southeast of Turkey. A military statement said 4 others were injured in the incident, which apparently took place in retaliation for Ankara's attack on the Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK in parallel with airstrikes on Daesh. Here's more.
The search is on for more roadside bombs and mines after an explosion killed 2 Turkish soldiers in the mainly Kurdish southeastern part of Turkey. The explosion hit a passing military vehicle, and Kurdish militants then opened fire with long-range rifles, according to the military, which also said the attack was in retaliation for Ankara's crackdown on the Kurdistan Workers' Party and was launched in tandem with strikes on Islamic State insurgents in Syria. This week, Turkey granted the U.S.-led coalition access to its air bases to launch air raids against both Islamic State and the PKK. Speaking in Africa, White House spokesman Ben Rhodes expressed his support for the military action.
At the same time, the U.S., of course, recognizes the PKK specifically as a terrorist organization. And we certainly, again, appreciate their interest in accelerating efforts against ISIL.
Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu said the campaign would continue as long as there is a threat against Turkey.
At the request of Turkey, NATO called an emergency meeting on Tuesday to discuss the security situation in light of recent developments in the country. In a statement, NATO said Turkey has requested the meeting in view of the seriousness of the situation after the heinous terrorist attack in recent days, and also to inform allies of the measures it is taking. NATO allies follow developments very closely and stand in solidarity with Turkey, the statement continued. Fans of Ernest Hemingway dressed up in the author's signature red beret and white shirt to mark the 116th anniversary of his birthday in Key West, Florida. Dozens of men paraded through the streets with wooden bowls as a proof of the annual running of the bulls in Spain, where Hemingway spent a significant amount of time. The parade was the highlight of the Key West Hemingway Day celebration, which honors the time the author spent on the island writing For Whom the Bell Tolls and To Have and Have Not. Other events honoring Hemingway include a short story competition organized by the author's granddaughter and a fishing tournament. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, William and Kate's Day, supporting British sailor Sir Ben Ainslie and his crew in the America's Cup World Series has blown off course by bad weather. Parts of William and Kate's itinerary had been cancelled and new venues found for other events after heavy rain, forcing the cancellation of America's Cup race. The royal couple had hoped to watch the first of 2 races from a boat, but that plan had to be shelved. Instead, they visited the base of Ainslie Land Rover Bar Racing Team, where Kate tried out an Oculus Rift sailing simulator. Later, they visited a local museum and met with local school children. In Paris, police opened fire on a car which drove through barriers set up for the final stage of Tour de France in the center, but said it appeared to be a minor incident. The driver escaped after refusing to obey to the police near the Place de la Concorde. A police official said the event was a minor incident rather than a terror attack and said it was an everyday refusal to complain. Hundreds of thousands of people were expected to gather in the Place de la Concorde and along Champs-Élysées Avenue for the final leg of the Tour de France later in the day. Manchester City players visited the SOS Children's Village on the outskirts of Hanoi a day before their friendly match with host Vietnam. Midfielder Fernandinho, Jesus Navas and David Silva and others of the team interacted with the children at the facility. The Premier League players met and took group photos with the children and joined them in making a handprint painting. Hundreds of fans lined up outside the facility hoping to catch a glimpse of the stars, but were kept away by heavy security. The team will have a light training session before a friendly match with Vietnam's national men's football team tomorrow. And finally, moderate conditions continue in hilly areas tonight, but it remains relatively hot in the Badia and the Jordan Valley. Hot conditions prevail tomorrow in most regions as the kingdom remains under the effect of heat wave. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to fresh. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect hot conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and the seas calm. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. Jordan condemns the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque compound by Jewish extremists led by the Israeli agriculture minister and the ensuing clashes that left dozens of guards and worshippers injured. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad says the Syrian army is quite capable, but the type of war confronting the country means the army cannot fight everywhere for risk of losing vital ground. And Kurdish militants killed 2 Turkish soldiers in an apparent retaliation of Ankara's crackdown of the PKK, and NATO calls an emergency meeting on Tuesday to discuss the security situation in Turkey. And with this, we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching and have a good night.